I don't want to call it Japanese fudge, but it's more like a Japanese chocolate meltaway. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Nakatomi Test Kitchen. Today we're going to be making matcha flavored nama chocolate. It's similar to fudge in how you make it, but the end result is more like a meltaway chocolate rather than something that you would chew. Like there's not really much to chew because it's just chocolate and cream and butter, and it's just, oh, it's so good. There's so many different ways to actually take chocolate and make little treats out of them. This is a little different from fudge, and this is a little different from a ganache, which would be like the center of a chocolate truffle, but it has the same kind of creamy consistency to it. Royce Chocolatiers in Japan is super famous for their nama chocolate. And nama literally means raw or live or fresh. And I think that's just kind of what Royce Chocolatier is kind of pushing with their nama chocolate, because they just kind of, it's not a brownie, it's not a cooked chocolate cookie, but it's a Japanese treat that's super amazing, super tasty, and it's given as gifts, especially around Valentine's Day or White Day, which is a month after Valentine's Day, so on March 14th. But let's go ahead and get started. It's like so easy to make. The longest thing that's gonna probably annoy you is that it has to sit in the fridge for 4 hours to set. But other than that, if you have the patience for that, you could actually make a really amazing homemade chocolate sweet that you can actually give as a gift or stash in your fridge. So let's get started. We are going to start with a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Now, heavy whipping cream, not half and half. It's probably better to use an animal fat-based cream here. You're looking for something that's 100% fat. Turn on the heat to like a low. As you know, these things are always a little bit unpredictable, but compared to like a regular stove. But you can, as long as you're not boiling this, you'll be in good shape. Most recipes have a larger ingredient list than this. As you know, I like to have recipes that are like just for like 1 or 2 people tops. And all the nama chocolate recipes that I had seen online had proportions that were like, you're just gonna like feed the whole neighborhood, and nobody needs to make that much chocolate in one sitting. So you're going to heat this. The other thing about making this for like a smaller number of people or smaller number of portions, that you can actually just make this in a frying pan as opposed to like a soup pot or like a pot to cook it in. So you're just gonna let this warm up. You don't want it to boil, but you want it to simmer just a little bit. Just as it starts coming up, I'm gonna go ahead and lower the heat. And then you are going to actually, what I'm going to do is actually turn off the heat completely. And add in, this is a tablespoon of unsalted butter. I just cut it into small cubes, it melts faster. And then 200 grams of white chocolate that you can just put on a wooden chopping block and just chop away. So in Japan, chocolate comes in, you know, grams and milligrams because it's metric. In the States, we tend to use ounces for chocolate. So let me actually get this melted together before I show you. See, I don't even have the heat on. Just stirring this so that everything melts together. And once that becomes super luscious and everything's melted together, we're going to add the matcha. So there's no need to add any additional sugar because the sugar came from the white chocolate. Oh, so what I was talking about is, so I'm using Ghirardelli chocolate here. You just want to make sure that whatever chocolate you're using, whether you're using a sugar-free chocolate, so you can actually make these like almost like a keto fat bomb, or if you're just using the traditional full sugar kind, you just want to make sure that you check the ingredient list on the back and make sure that it says that it's made with cocoa butter and not vegetable oil. A lot of the cheaper mass-produced chocolates tend to be made with like a milk powder and vegetable oil, and that doesn't work really well when you're trying to make生チョコ. And like I was saying earlier, American bars come in, this is a 4-ounce bar, which is 113.5 grams. So if you want to do this Japanese recipe and you're looking to do 200 grams, you can use a scale and measure it out so you have a precise measurement. Or if you just want to believe me, after I used the digital scale, it was basically 2 bars minus 1 square. So, but different chocolate bars are portioned in different ways. So if you use a different brand than what I chose to use today, just make sure that you're only getting 200 grams of the chocolate to use. Otherwise, it won't set the same way. Okay, so to this, we're going to add a tablespoon of my favorite matcha powder. And just to make sure you don't get any clumps, you just want to make sure that you put it through a sieve. I love the smell of matcha so much. A little time consuming, but it's definitely worth it. You can opt to skip the putting it through a sieve step, but there is a likelihood that you will have really bitter matcha clumps. So just keep that in mind. Stir that all in. That warm matcha powder. Oh gosh, that smells so good. Now, if you want to just make white chocolate nama choco, then basically it's the same recipe just without the matcha powder. But I tend to like flavored chocolates. Roy's Chocolatiers actually does a sakura cherry blossom flavored choco in the springtime, so I'm kind of waiting for that to show up so I can go and get some for myself and for my friends. Okay, put all this away. And what I've got is a parchment paper lined like glass baking dish that I've lined with parchment paper. So all of the traditional recipes are like, put this in a big 8x8 baking sheet, but that's going to make just too many pieces of chocolate. So we're gonna go with a smaller Pyrex dish. And then all you're going to do is just pour the green goo into the baking dish. Then you want to just make sure it gets into the corners. And you can tap this a couple of times, because you'll start seeing these like air bubbles pop up. And you can either use a chopstick to pop these air bubbles, or a toothpick, or you can use a chef's trick and just get a blowtorch. Just be careful you don't burn the paper around, but get it close enough. Just notice that it actually just pop the bubbles. Okay. This gets wrapped in saran wrap and gets placed in the fridge for, this is what I was warning you about at the beginning of the episode. This is where you have to wait. I like making sure that the parchment paper is pulled back so that you actually get an actual rectangle. And once that's been wrapped in saran wrap, that goes into the fridge for 4 hours or overnight. And luckily, I've already made one, so I can show you what one looks like. So this has been in the fridge for 4 hours and has completely set. So you see there's some air bubbles that still kind of came up afterwards, but it's not that big a deal because we're going to actually dress this up with some additional matcha powder. So go ahead and put this to the side. You can tell where I creme bruleed the paper just a little bit. So this kind of has the consistency of a fudge, but fudge uses like condensed milk, and so it has more, like you chew it a little bit more before it dissolves in your mouth. This just dissolves in your mouth. So here's a little handy trick. If you have your burner nearby, you can actually turn that on and use that to kind of heat up your knife before you make your cuts. And just wipe between each cut, reheat. And you can cut the edges off. Now you can cut the edges off before you make the squares, or not, up to you. And there we go. And then to that, we're just going to dust matcha powder all over it. So you can use a sieve, like I was saying before, or you can just kind of liberally dust for a more rustic look. And it's always a good idea just to do this on some parchment paper, just so it's easy to clean up after. So let's go ahead and just take one little square. It looks so pretty as well. It's so good. Gives me green fingers. So traditionally this will be served with like a fork. When you purchase nama choco at places like Roy's Chocolatier, which are kind of all over the world, most of the stores are actually in Japan, obviously. But even like places like here in Las Vegas, there's actually a store at inside the Venetian Grand Canal shops, and they have all the seasonal flavors as well as their dark chocolate, and they have one with like bourbon or whiskey mixed in. But their green tea nama chocolate is super, super popular, and for good reason. I'm just so I'm just so happy right now. It's like having like a little matcha kind of square of happiness. So I hope you try this. Obviously the base is the same. If you want to do other flavored nama chocolates, if you want to maybe try like a coffee one, or try like you can try different chocolates, but usually chocolate nama like traditional nama chocolate using like a dark chocolate would not start with the white chocolate, just start with just a regular dark chocolate bar. So, but the process is the same. You can now serve this with like a cup of tea. You can actually serve it with another cup of green tea if you want, or you can just package these up in like little gift boxes and give them to your friends. But make sure that they stay refrigerated. When you do go to Roy's Chocolatier and you do buy a box or a couple of boxes, they actually will put ice packs and wrap each one up in like you know those silver cooler envelopes, I guess. So the box in that, They'll add like an ice pack so that it stays cold, and they tell you get it into a fridge within, you know, a few hours, because otherwise the whole thing will just melt. It's really just that delicate. And I hope that you will try your hand at making your own batch of Nama chocolate to give to your friends or to your lover or to give it to yourself. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Nakatomi Test Kitchen. I'm your host, Kelly Nakatomi, and I will see you again next time.